Well, a Boy Scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. Words to live by. Or so I thought back in the day when I was a Boy Scout for 6 years. Those were days long ago, but I completely lost track of my story. Trouble was, my best friend Mark was not so much a fan of those principles of living. And he was my assistant patrol leader on our third year at Boy Scout camp. I was so proud to be a patrol leader, and I wanted to show Mr. Sandberg, our scoutmaster, that I could really lead, but there was Mark, and he always seemed to be going the opposite direction. Maybe you had friends like that. I don't know. One trouble spot was daily inspection. We had to line up in formation, patrol by patrol. Mr. Sandberg would look at each of us to make sure we were in our correct dress uniform in every respect. We had these long green socks with garters, little red flags, and the hat had to be right. The neckerchief was very important because that had our colors, our identification. And then we would march in formation down to the dining hall. So this inspection was a big deal, and each patrol got points, and we were always losing points because of Mark. Half the time he'd show up missing some parts of his uniform. One time, though, he came dressed perfectly. He smiled at me, and I nodded. He got in his place. We're all at attention, so I can't see him. When Mr. Sandberg comes to Mark, his pockets are pulled out, his hat is on a side, and he's got his silly grin on his face, and we lose points. Well, on our first overnight camping trip, which was, this is the real stuff. This is real camping. The stuff in, back at Boy Scout camp with inspections and everything, that had an air of artificiality, but this was the real stuff, and I wanted to teach our boys how to camp. Some of them were quite young, so we hike all day, we pitch our tents. Mark and I are working pretty well together, teaching them how to do that, and then I take half the patrol out in the woods to gather wood and leave him back to teach fire building. Now this is hemlock forest. This is New York State. It's very wet. It's hard to find wood. We're out there quite a while, and the secret is you look up on the branches of the trees and you break off the branches that are still there, because anything on the floor of the forest is not going to burn. So we're out there quite a while. We even take a rope and throw it over some branches and pull them down. And I'm sending boys back to camp with armloads, and I come up at the end dragging a bunch of branches. And as I get closer to the campsite, I can't see anything because the tents are in the way, but I smell smoke. I'm very far away. That seems odd. As I get a little closer, I hear crackling fire. I drop my wood, go running around the tents, and I see this giant bonfire. It's so big, it's intense. I can feel the heat just from the edge of the tents, and the boys are lobbing firewood from 10 feet away. And Mark is encouraging them. He says, more! He grabs this log that's a bench, and 3 other boys help him, and I watch them throw it on, and I'm just going berserk. I run in, what are you doing? And they all stop. I look, and I start pulling the log off the fire so it can't catch. I said, get that jerry can, get this. I start giving commands, and they all whip into action, and somehow we tame this fire. A lot of wood is piled off to the side, soaked with water. Fortunately, it's a wet forest, so forest fire really isn't a danger, but I am just overwhelmed with all of this. And I said, Mark, where's all the firewood I kept sending back? He said, well, we burned it. And I was hoping we'd have 2 days of firewood there. So I was not a happy camper at all for the rest of the evening. I think Mark organized dinner. I probably cleaned up by myself because no one wanted to work with me. It was a restless night sleeping. The next morning, we're making pancakes and scrambled eggs. It's peaceful. Mr. Sandberg comes into our tent, and he looks around. He looks at all the charred wood, including the big bench that's charred, and he sort of smiles, and he comes up to me, and he says, Quinby, we're going to have a big campfire tomorrow near my tent. All the patrols are coming. The other patrols will gather firewood. I want you to be in charge of building the fire. because I hear your patrol is good at that. It's a silence. I don't know how to respond. And I sort of go like this. And Mark goes, yes! And the other boys go, yes! And they pound me on the back like I did something. And all of a sudden, all that accumulated venom from what had happened the night before just sort of fell away. And we built that bonfire, had a great campfire. And the rest of the summer, somehow, for some reason, I relaxed my expectations. And Mark was more cooperative. Now, a couple of years ago, I talked with him. He calls me every year on my birthday, and I call him on his. And I asked, what do you remember from that camping trip? And he said, didn't you guess? We planned it. It was all a plan.